All right, everybody. Hello, hello. Good evening. Good evening, and welcome to the District 1 Runoff candidate discussion. I'm Cosima Colvin, and I live in Beacon Hill in District 1. I'm a founding member of the Tier 1 Neighborhood Coalition, one of tonight's sponsors. Other Tier 1 members that helped put this together and are here tonight are Tony Garcia. Tony, put up your hand. Of Monte Vista, Christina Wright from Alta Vista, Anissa Shell from Tobin Hill, and Mary Johnson of the Monte Vista Terrace Neighborhood Association. Cynthia Spielman from Beacon Hill also helped with the planning and is hopefully watching from the road. We would like to thank Charlotte Ann Lucas from NOWCastSA for providing the AV services and acting as moderator, along with Ben Olivo at the end of the SA Heron. A big thanks to Lisa Asbestos for hosting us here at The Cove, an iconic District 1 eatery. Much appreciation for those of you that have taken the time and made the effort to be here tonight. Welcome to our candidates, incumbent Roberto Treviño and candidate Mario Bravo. And we can turn it over to Charlotte Ann Lucas and get started. Thank you.
I think so. Hi, I'm Charlotte Ann Lucas. I lead NOWCastSA, and for the last 11 years, we have been doing events like this where we are connecting people and making it accessible for you to find information about people running for office so that you can get your butts out to vote and vote in an informed way. I also want to thank, before we go any further, our media partners in this, the San Antonio Heron, local community news, I see you there, and the San Antonio Current, for helping get out the word and helping people find more information about this. It's obviously really, really important. And our sponsors, Tier 1 Neighborhood Coalition, thank you so very much. Killen, Griffin, and Fairmont, thank you very much. Tobin Hill Community Association, and Lynn Kanapik, thank you very much. Okay. When we roll to events like this, we roll with about $30,000 worth of equipment, and all of our people are paid a living wage, and those sponsors made that possible. As you know, as I said, NOWCastSA, our nonprofit mission is to promote and facilitate an inclusive civic conversation. So today's event is absolutely in our sweet spot. That's what we do. And I hope you leave this event knowing more and feeling like you can cast an informed vote. I'm really glad to have Ben Olivo as co-moderator of this event. Ben, you also run a nonprofit who depends on donations, right?
Correct. So my name is Ben Olivo, editor and co-founder of the San Antonio Heron. And like NOWCastSA, we're a nonprofit local news organization. We do rely very, very heavily on reader support, and the majority of our revenue comes from readers. And so we're actually launching our yearly campaign tomorrow. So be sure to follow us on social media, San Antonio Heron, or visit the website saheron.com, and we'd appreciate any support that y'all could give us. If you want to submit any questions, there's the table right behind the cameras. Christina will be collecting questions, and there's cards over here on the other side of the cameras. And we'll get to those audience questions toward the end. Do we want to start with Charlotte Ann? Start with the first question? Or? Okay.
Oh, and you're going to explain where the first questions came from.
Correct. So the first questions were submitted by neighborhood representatives who serve on the Tier 1 steering committee. And, you know, if Charlotte Ann and I have our own questions, we'll make sure to let y'all know that there are questions. And obviously, the audience questions at the end will identify those as well. That way, everybody knows where the questions are coming from. So. All right, let's get started. So question number one, and this will go to the councilman first, and then Mario, if you want to answer after him. Question number one, the property tax rate increase is now at an average of 7% per residence. As the state bill continues to increase, as the state tax bill continues to increase, so do the market appraisal values. Homeowners are encouraged to protest the inflated appraisal values to reduce the amount of taxes they owe. However, the system is set up to pay the bill. If values decrease, then the tax rate percentage is increased. Meanwhile, City of San Antonio receives only 55 cents per $100 of the taxable property values. So with many significant demands on the budget, including aging infrastructure and the glaring economic segregation that still exists between district areas, it is difficult to make sense of the decisions made by City Council and appointed boards and commissions to give developers tax break incentives. So the question to both of y'all is, what can be done to relieve the burden on residents?
Thank you for that question. I think part of that question is really about educating folks about the difference between property tax assessments, evaluations, and property tax actual assessment or payment. And so you have the value of a property, and then each taxing entity takes that portion. At the heart of this is that we have a very imbalanced system, a system that favors more of the commercial property valuation, which puts most of the pressure on residential valuations, and therefore the appraisal district, they recommend that you protest every single year. Generally, commercial properties pay 60 cents on the dollar compared to residential. So every time commercial values drop, it simply pressures residential values to go up because the state is demanding that there's a certain amount of valuation that comes forth. There's many other rules, but what we've done, because this has come up several times, and I think it's a little misleading to assume that the city of San Antonio has everything to do with this tax bill. The real issue is we're 20% of your tax bill, but there's a document that was independently procured by the city of San Antonio. We paid about $80,000 for this document. We've posted it on our website, and we'll share with everybody. This really breaks apart all the different things that cause some of these imbalances, like equal and uniform status. So, for example, a property on the south side is simply is valued at one thing, but let's say La Cantera, commercial property, wants to use the statute called equal and uniform on the south side to help create that valuation. They will sue based on that statute that came about by state legislation. We also want to make sure that as we're moving forward, that the state is focusing a lot more on making sure that we're putting more money into public schools. The state is putting less and less money and putting the pressure on property taxes to make up that bill.
Okay.
Bottom line is, we recommend every single year residential property owners protest their taxes. This year alone, 97% of those that protested made it through the informal process successfully.
Okay, thank you. CA, do you want to?
I just wanted to say that we do not have in place at this exact moment a timekeeper. So you go for about as long as he went until we get that timekeeper set up. Got that? Okay.
Got it. Thank you very much. Before I jump into that, let me just introduce myself. My name is Mario Bravo, and I grew up here in San Antonio. Thank you very much. I moved here in 1984 in the 3rd grade. And, for some of you remember that recent winter storm. I remember the winter storm of 1985 when we got 13 inches of snow. And that was my first time to be able to make a snowman here in San Antonio. And, I think back, I look now at our property taxes that we pay and our property values, the amount that people have to pay in rent, the amount people have to pay in order to buy a home. And I think back to 1984 when my family moved to San Antonio. I don't think we would be able to afford to move here if it was today. We moved here when I was in the 3rd grade. We moved here from Laredo, Texas. We moved here for economic opportunity. My mother and father are right here in the front row. This is my mother, Sissy Bravo. I'm so glad to have them. My mother worked in education, and she retired recently from SAISD. My father had a small construction business. And, we came here for economic opportunity. I don't think we would be able to afford to move here if it was today. And so we need to stop taxing people out of their homes. And, Councilman Treviño he not only is our council member who gets to vote on the city's property tax rate, but he's also on our property tax appraisal district. He's the chair of the board that decides, on our valuations and when we set a new appraisal. And just last night we were talking about this in the Lavaca Neighborhood Association candidate forum, and I brought up, well, why did you appraise again during COVID? And he said, no, we had to. But, Austin didn't. They didn't raise their the appraisals. And just check the news. Check the news anywhere in Austin. They did not reassess and appraise everybody's property tax or their property values again. And so they didn't pay a higher property tax, during our pandemic when people were struggling. And so we need to do more. We need to expect more from our local elected officials.
Wait one second. We definitely need to give you a chance to respond.
Thank you. What I also said last night is that we don't need misleading statements, just like that one. The Bear Appraisal Board of Directors, by law, are not setting values. That's completely false and misleading, and that's not going to solve any problems. We've got to do this by working within the system, and everything I just described is part of it. We're gonna share this document that was independently done and describe some of the issues that we face as a city, as we face as a appraisal district. It's critical that we're upfront and honest about the facts.
So, all right. Yeah, this is a related question, which looks at the other side of this of tax, like who's getting tax relief. Talking about developers, yes or no? Do you support developer incentive tax relief? Councilman.
We support projects that are investing in areas that provide an overall investment in the city that provides for increased sales tax revenue, in addition to the ability to add to the system, to add to the tax revenues that the city sees, because the city sees revenues not just from property taxes, but also from sales taxes and CPS revenues. When you develop something, there are those things that also come into benefit for the city. So it's all calculated to make sure that we're benefiting in a way that the city can grow and incentivize that growth and continue that momentum.
Okay, thank you. Mario?
So, during the pandemic, property taxes in Austin did not go up. During the pandemic, property taxes in San Antonio did go up. We had the opportunity to prevent them from going up by not appraising, and we did anyway, and our property taxes went up. Bottom line. So, do I support property
incentives to developers?
Incentives for developers. I don't support a lot of the ones that we've done to date. I would support them if they're completely transparent and if they pencil out and we can show a benefit to the community. And what I also don't support is, if I win this election, I'm elected to a 2-year term. 2 years, that's it, right? And why would I feel that I have the authority to take a prime piece of real estate off the tax rolls for the next 75 years. 75 years. I've been elected for 2 years. I'm going to make a decision on who the tax burden is going to be shifted to for the next 75 years. That's just ludicrous to me, and I think we need to scale that back.
Okay.
Sure, Lynn.
I'm going to try to do a timer thing in the until someone from the audience comes up and volunteers to do the timer thing. We're
I'm happy to
accepting
stay all night.
volunteers. Okay. All right, the next question. And we will start with you, Mario. San Antonio's homeless population is more than 2,900 people, according to the South Alamo Regional Alliance for the Homeless. And that number, and that number is projected to increase. While the work is being done to create policy, adjust the budget, find resources, none of which are an immediate solution, the day-to-day challenges are impacting community well-being for everyone. And this question first to Mario and then to Roberto. How can City Council provide resources for the homeless population without burdening the surrounding neighborhood residents? And I'm going to start a 3-minute timer.
Thank you very much. So, just like Councilman Treviño, I believe that homelessness is not a crime. Just like Councilman Treviño, I believe that we need a housing-first policy. I think where we differ is when the strategic homeless plan was presented to our city council, what they told us was that what does not work is a patchwork, like a patchwork of disconnected projects. And that is what we have seen over the last 6 years, and that is why we haven't reduced homelessness over the last 6 years. And so if we're going to be compassionate, we need to be more effective. And the way we do that is not by being, if I'm the council member, it's not my job to provide the direct services to the homeless. It's my job to make sure that we are supporting the experienced professionals in our community. So I'm going to make sure that we do a better job of communicating with, like bringing all the experienced professionals to the table, and make sure that everybody's doing a better job of communicating and a better job of coordinating. Because when we do that, we can find where are the gaps in services. We can find where are we duplicating efforts, and then we can do a better job of looking at, what the experienced professionals need and how can we best invest your tax dollars in supporting them. Leverage your tax dollars to support them better so they can do a better job at what they do. And that is going to be my goal. And it's not going to be by running a homeless resource center out of the district office, because I trust the experienced professionals to be able to do this. And it has to be done not just in District 1, because this issue exists all across our city. And so we need to do this citywide, and that takes working with your colleagues at City Council, getting their buy-in, getting their support, so we can all work together. Thank you.
Okay, you want me to repeat the question? But the gist of the question is, how can the City Council provide resources for the homeless population without burdening the surrounding neighborhood residents?
That's such an important question, because I think we have set a framework for how we can make that happen. We have worked with partners like Sam's Ministries, American GI Forum, Yana Juan El Barrios, the Department of Human Services, our own city staff. Here's the main issue. The main issue is that this isn't a problem that happens in any one neighborhood. It happens in every neighborhood. And District 1 has 37 different neighborhoods that we have to attend to. Let's remember one thing, that when somebody comes and asks the city for help, you should help them. It's as simple as that. It's a philosophy. I won't stand for anybody who's trying to say, you know what, let's divide the neighborhoods from the people that are homeless. Homelessness is not a crime. It's not a crime. And many people want to call homeless people vagrants. The beginning of all wisdom starts with calling things by their proper name. That was Confucius. I believe in that because that is at the heart of what we're trying to do here. everybody here deserves to be treated with compassion and with care. That's what we're going to keep doing. We have done that, and we have created a coordinated effort. That's what he left out that was in the actual plan that came to City Council in December. It's calling for a coordinated plan to help people. It also calls for outreach that we don't do, outreach that is not enough. And we've proven that outreach works. Outreach works. Repeat that. Outreach works. Get to know people. This is the way it works. And then proof of that is at our office. We've gotten 30 people off the street. We've helped 50 people connected to services. We've got some of them jobs. And it is because of outreach, not by criminalizing homelessness.
Thank you, Councilman. We're going to move on. Oh, go ahead.
After a brief pause, we're going to move on. We have a timekeeper, everyone. A hand for Thelma. I've been doing 3 minutes, but they've been finishing in 2. So maybe we can give you 3 minutes, and if you finish in 2, you finish in 2. If you go over, you go over.
Sounds good. Sounds good.
We accept.
Okay,
All right.
give them a 10-second warning if they hit it. Okay.
All right. All right, we're gonna move on to the UDC.
And
So-
you're going to explain what the UDC is.
Well, it's just reading the script here.
Unified Development Code.
Yes, one of the most critical city documents as far as impact to residents is the Unified Development Code, or UDC. Problems with this document include exemptions and loopholes, language barriers, and ambiguity, which forces residents, boards, and commissions to rely on staff interpretations. Often, these interpretations are applied inconsistently, and the generous use of administrative approvals leaves the public out of the development process. One city department, the Development Services Department, is in charge of this document, its interpretation, and its enforcement. The Development Services Department is funded through the issuance of building permits, creating an incentive for city staff to approve more applications than they might otherwise. The question, Councilman, first is, what policy changes would you make, and where would you start with those?
And Councilman Treviño, get closer to the mic. Think of it as an ice cream cone.
Maybe not. I'm just going to eat it. This is exactly the kind of role that I've demonstrated over the last 6.5 years in representing this community. How many of these issues did we face when we were talking about the SA Tomorrow plan? How many, right? We were talking about a lot of these plans with city staff, and then city staff would change something, and we'd all wonder what happened. Well, it's the same thing with the UDC code. The UDC is set up to create a framework. But the bottom line is, what we know is that we want to be a city of opportunity, not consequences. And if that framework isn't set up to be thinking about the community, to be compassionate, it's not going to serve us well. UDC 2911 is one of the most used UDC codes in the entire city. Every city council member has stated this one, and it is about your sidewalks. It says that, you know what, you're responsible for your sidewalks. But we've got to change that, because the bottom line is that really just simply doesn't work. Well, we've changed that in District 1. We've changed that forever. Sidewalks are being built like never before. And it turns out that part of the reason that some of these things happen has more to do with interpretation of words, the kind of financial responsibility that the city has to have. But what we know is that what you want and what you need is us to help represent you, represent your voice. And so the UDC is critical. We've delayed the UDC amendments that were supposed to come up last year during the pandemic. And one of the first things all the neighborhood leaders came to me about was, listen, we can't be doing this without a meaningful conversation about our UDC. So they came to me asking for a delay, and we delayed it. And we delayed it because we know that there's a lot of things in that UDC code that if we do not address our current needs and concerns, that they become the framework for consequences, not opportunities. I will be that champion for you.
Mario?
So well, first let me rewind. I think the councilman implied or stated that the key that I missed on working with the homeless is that we have to have a coordinated effort. And I said coordinated, I believe I said it 2 times. But on the Unified Development Code, I'm disappointed that we haven't implemented it already. We have worked with so many people to get input throughout COVID, but yet we couldn't. We'd said, no, we need more public input for this. We need more public input. We need better public input processes, but we could have done that. We could have at least begun that process during the pandemic. We could have done it by now. And you mentioned the Development Services Department. One of the big challenges we have is that the Development Services Department always sides with developers. And that's because they're structurally incentivized to do that. So their budget depends on them approving projects. And so they side with the developers over the neighborhoods. And that's a challenge. And that's something that we're going to have to address and change, because otherwise, people in the neighborhoods, they have to go hire their own attorneys. They have to go fight their own processes. And it's a huge challenge. And that's something that we have to get better on.
A follow-up question, and Mario, we'll start with you. What can be done to ensure that the public process is followed for all variances and exceptions, and how can the city provide more transparency and oversight in decisions and interpretations?
Well, one of the things that I have proposed is related to police accountability. I first discovered this when looking into police accountability. And I saw that in the city of Denver, Colorado, they have an office of an independent monitor. And so it's a citizens oversight committee. Now, they have their own independent budget. They have a staff of 13. They have 6 attorneys. And these people will help you. If there's an excessive use of force incident, they will go and they will assist the victim or the family of the victim in requesting body cam footage. They'll assist them in the legal process to make sure that you get justice. But as I was looking at that, I started to think, we could expand the scope of a department like this, a citizens oversight committee, with attorneys that work for you, the taxpayers, and they could do they could do conflict of interest investigations. And look, where do we have where is the structural incentive backwards in working against the community? And I think this is something that could serve us. It could serve the community when they're dealing with challenges with Development Services Department. Because right now, we have an ethics review board that is extremely narrow in scope. There's hardly anything they can look at if they want to investigate ethics violations in our city. And so I think we could do a lot better, and I think this independent oversight committee could handle that work.
Councilman?
¿Quién habla español? ¿Quién habla español? In 2016, we didn't have Spanish translation services at City Hall. You want access? Can you believe that this city would say that it's providing equal access to everybody if we didn't provide equal access to Spanish translation? And it was a Spanish translator who told me, what's really important about translation isn't just words, it's meaning. You know what I learned about that? I learned that we as a city also have to meet people where they are. We need to know that sometimes we could be speaking jargon. We could be talking over their heads. Can you imagine that our chief financial officer is speaking about some very, very complex things about how AAA rating is so important and the financing of the city is going to be so critical. But if people don't understand why or don't understand what he's saying, how's that going to help us? We need to connect people and meet them where they are. Those are some examples of things I've done. This is a city that is primarily Hispanic. Many people only speak Spanish. And it wasn't until 2016 that we accomplished that. That's a big deal. We continue to do programs like this because that is how you connect the city or our community better to our city. And we want to hold our city accountable to make sure that the things that we're doing are understood by the community they serve. Simple as that.
Okay, and for the next issue area, neighborhood associations and residents are forced to act as representatives or enforcers of their neighborhood or sub-area plans and overlay districts, not only against developers and investors, but with the Development Services Department as well. When development requests that are counter to legal ordinances are approved and the input of community is ignored, overruled, or lost in translation, significant damages can occur to our communities, not only in the built environment, but to its residents as well as they face displacement. And again, this came from a group effort from the Tier 1 Neighborhood Association. It does contain some conclusions, I would say. How would you enhance neighborhood empowerment or ensure that neighborhoods are at the forefront of discussions? And I think we start with you, Mario.
So, again, the problem with the Development Services Department is that their funding relies on them approving the developers' projects over the neighborhood's wishes. It depends on them granting them variances, and not having to follow all of our city rules. And so we need to change that. And I'm committed to doing that. I think you can't expect to get real change there from somebody who's taking a lot of campaign contributions, maximum campaign contributions from all the developers.
Yeah.
My campaign contributions don't come from out of state, by the way. Let me just say something. I was there with you, with the neighborhoods, when they talked about some of the changes to the SA Tomorrow plan. Y'all remember that? Remember how they kept taking out the word neighborhood plans. And if you're a neighborhood leader, this was so important to you. I was your champion. And absolutely. One of the things that is so critical here is that we know the Development Services is trying to do a job, trying to move the city forward a certain way, but we cannot forget the fact that the City Council office is a place that represents the voice of the community, and working with each and every neighborhood to understand that they have created plans, that they have worked very hard to know things like compatibility. They talk about the history of their neighborhood. They want to talk about how these things should be incorporated in part of our major planning of our city. This is teamwork. This is how we did it. I don't have to talk about it or promise. We did this together.
Alrighty. Now we're going to talk about police accountability. Voter data for the general election shows that District 1 largely voted in favor of Proposition B. In fact, more people voted on the proposition than voted for mayor. And the majority of District 1 voters are in favor of at least some level of police reform. The question, Councilman, to you first is, what will your priorities be to ensure your constituents' concerns about police accountability are represented?
First, I was the only council member that came out in favor of Prop B. I was the only candidate who came out for Prop B. And I didn't change my mind on that. The key here is understanding that there are some key items that are simply non-negotiable, like transparency and accountability. Some of those have been adopted in the plan. We continue to follow that. I have a great team that is really, really focused on making sure that accountability is at the forefront. We're not going to negotiate that. And so now that we're past this point, one of the things we need to learn was that the city really showed that, hey, it's a pretty even split. But I think what you can interpret from that is that everybody wants accountability, and we're going to continue to monitor that. We attend every meeting that is happening with the negotiations, and we will make sure that as the contract moves forward, that is at the forefront. The 10 items that Fixed SAPD came up with are so critical. We're going to try to understand how much of that did get met in the contract. That is the whole point. We want to be there for people. We know that there are just way too many stories, way too many families that have suffered through this. This is not as simple as one simple contract. This is about understanding how families are affected, and we can provide an avenue that provides true accountability, but most importantly, compassion for our community. Thank you.
And Mario?
I'm going to address the last situation first, and that is when somebody makes a contribution to my campaign, I write them a thank you letter. And when I write a thank you letter to people from out of state, these people are people who, they're my former coworkers. They're people I went to school with. They're people I grew up with that now they're family members who live out of state. And when I write them a thank you letter, I say, thank you for believing in me and supporting me to improve my hometown. And so I'm very grateful for that. And it's a stark contrast from taking dollars from developers who expect for us to shift the property tax burden onto you. On Prop B, it's all about police accountability, and police accountability is non-negotiable. I was at the table with many people who worked on Prop B in the early days, before there was a Prop B, brainstorming on how do we get more police accountability. And I continue to be committed to that. What I said during the course of the campaign is that I'm going to respect the will of the voters, but no matter what, when I get into office, I am going to I'm committed to police accountability. I didn't put, unlike the council member who has done nothing on police accountability for 6.5 years and maybe just put his finger in the wind and said, ooh, what's going to help me get elected this time? I said, I'm going to run on all the issues. I'm going to respect the will of the voters. But when I get there, I'm going to work on police accountability. And I'm going to ensure that we have it. There are many issues in our current police contract that the councilman voted for that I will not support. So I'll start with police disciplinary records are written in disappearing ink under the current contract. After 2 years, they go away, and the police chief is not allowed to look at them in consideration for disciplinary measures. In addition to that, we have an arbitrary time period of 180 days, in which if the police officer who's accused of a crime or has violated a policy, if they're not prosecuted within 180 days, then on a technicality, they can get their job back. The police officer who put dog feces in between 2 pieces of bread and tried to feed it to a homeless person, lost his job, was fired, won his job back on a technicality because it took over 180 days. So I will make sure I will not vote for a police contract if it contains many of these provisions that prevent us from firing bad officers.
That's time. That's time.
I think that the councilman deserves a response to. There was a personal shot there.
Oh yeah, there's a lot of personal shots. Look, when folks are donating to my campaign, they're donating to my record. I'm not beholden to somebody who gives me a campaign donation and then is interpreted by another campaign team to say, that's what you're going to get. No, you're going to get something because you have a record where there is no record. Simple as that.
But before we move on, can we get some of the audience questions, Christina?
Rebuttals?
Let me. We're trying to figure out the clock situation.
Maybe the kids have some questions.
Okay. Okay.
Did you send? Did you give it to? Well, they're right. They. Okay. Yeah, we got it. We were waiting for the questions to come to the stage.
Okay, I trust your judgment on that. Okay, all right. Okay, I'm going to take the last question on here, and then we'll go to the reader questions. Or do you want to? The last infrastructure in District 1 is some of the oldest in the city. Many neighborhoods are missing sidewalks or never had them. Streets lack curbs or need repaving. At the same time, citizens have witnessed the repaving of streets only to have San Antonio water systems come through soon after to do work, undoing all the repairs that had just been done, or find they cannot use the sidewalks that they do have without it being obstructed by a CPS pole due to the placement of a CPS pole or other obstacle. And this is not a new issue. I know it's been brought up several times before. How would you prioritize and facilitate infrastructure improvements in the district? And I'm sorry, are we starting with Mario? Did we start with?
Yeah, Mario
yes.
first.
Okay.
Yeah.
I've been walking all over District 1, and what I find is we have so many neglected parts of the district. I find broken sidewalks. I find sidewalks that go halfway down the block and then stop. I remember knocking on one woman's door, and she said, you know, my mother just passed away, but before she did, she was in a wheelchair, and I had to push her in the street because the sidewalk didn't go all the way through on my block. So I've seen broken sidewalks, missing sidewalks all throughout our district. And what I tell voters is this: they're your tax dollars, right? And so I will prioritize investing your tax dollars in your neighborhood in ways that improve your quality of life. One of the biggest, a vote that drove me crazy back in 2018 is when Roberto Treviño voted to spend $39 million to remodel their own council offices, but only $6 million for sidewalks for the entire city. And so that's why I say I will prioritize investing your tax dollars on infrastructure in your neighborhoods that improves your quality of life.
Councilman, you're up.
Okay, thank you. Infrastructure is something I take very seriously. From sidewalks to streets to maintenance by SAWS. SAWS has what's called the consent decree, and the consent decree talks about fixing some of the oldest and most decayed sewer lines in the entire city. One of the things we created was a data sharing CCR. Sharing data between entities is so critical so that we can time things at the same time. So that whenever the SAWS needs to get in there and repair a sewer line, we can time some of the street repair along with that. We created that data sharing CCR. We also, absolutely. We also want, I'm going to go back to UDC 2911. You know, to talk about sidewalks as if you knew how it all worked. The city simply just didn't want to do sidewalks until we've changed that. And you can look it up. Ben Gorzel, who our chief financial officer, simply said we as a city cannot fix sidewalks because of debt obligation. It does not allow us to use that money for maintenance. It was semantics. By learning that, we said, look, let's call it the Sidewalk Reconstruction Program, and just look around your neighborhood. It's happening. We are repairing sidewalks like you've never seen. This isn't just happening in District 1, it's all citywide, and Public Works has never seen anything like it. And in fact, it really has unlocked millions of dollars, and no, it's not $36 million, it's $80 million. And the next bond will allow us to tap into those millions of dollars to continue to connect people better. Pedestrian mobility is a core value of mine, and we want to make sure that we build out the best sidewalk neighborhoods in the entire city.
I want to take a moment to pause, also to remind people to thank our sponsors who made this possible. And among those organizations who made this event possible, besides, is the Cove, Tier 1 Neighborhood Coalition, Killen, Griffin, and Fairmond Law Firm, Tobin Hill Community Association,
Yay!
Lynn Knappich.
Yay!
Thank you. Thank you for making this possible.
And don't forget to tip your bartenders and servers.
Do you have a response to that, Councilman? Or is that- That's good. You get to go first in this next. There's a question from the audience. What is your COVID recovery plan to help small business owners?
That's a great question, because it actually starts with something that we began with even before we were thinking about the COVID recovery. We were thinking about people that were going through the issue in the middle of the pandemic. Last October, we filed a CCR for food and beverage workers, including the hospitality industry, that said this is an industry that was suffering the most. Look at us now. This could have never happened last October, but here we are. And businesses like this one needed help. And we allocated $14.25 million to get them that help. We need to do more of that. As the federal relief dollars come back, we need to prioritize the businesses that were hardest hit and make sure that they get that relief. Additionally, let's not forget, we still must continue to vaccinate our city. We've got to get to 100% vaccinate.
Hey.
We need to continue to work on getting us back to normal. But it's going to take a lot of us working together, working with small business stakeholders to make sure that we are providing that relief. We are closest to the people. We're closest to these small businesses. And so we have demonstrated that there's a framework to do just that. I want to continue to do similar efforts. One of the issues that came up early on that affected District 1 in an unfortunate way was the way they applied some of the economic recovery was called the Equity Atlas. The Equity Atlas was not very fair to businesses because it used census data, residential census data. Well, District 1 is a central business district, and so a lot of businesses got left out. We corrected that. And so a lot of businesses benefited from that, and we will continue to do that same thing.
Mario?
I hopefully he's around and will hear us say this. I missed somebody. Thank you, Mitch Webb, for the help on the sound system. As I have been known to say, if the audio sucks, the video sucks. There is no video without audio. Thank you, Mitch.
So, yeah. What is your COVID recovery plan to help small business owners?
So I know what it's like to be supported by a small business because my father was a small business owner. And growing up, you know, he had a small construction company. But growing up, when your family owns a small business, everybody in the family works for the small business. So I grew up working weekends, working summers, working holidays. A lot of times our work was at the Levi Strauss plant, installing the new washing machines that were so big they could wash a pallet of jeans at a time. And when I was 120 pounds, I only weighed 120 pounds, I was running 90-pound jackhammers back then. But I know what the good days were like and the bad days. And and I know how not getting paid can set your family back. I know those challenges. I remember them. So I'm going to lean on the owners of small and micro businesses in our community to help guide us. Yes, we supported independent in food and beverage with $14 million, but we didn't do that until a year into the pandemic. You can't make people suffer for a year before you support them. And before that, when we gave them support, when we got federal and state dollars, the city went and put all these obstacles in the way. We added all these new requirements that prevented our small and micro businesses from qualifying. My friend Javier Paredes is here right now. He's an owner of Carnitas Lonja, a fantastic restaurant over off of Roosevelt. They did not qualify, because of, and they didn't qualify because of obstacles that were unnecessary that the city put in place. So we need to be in better communication with our small and micro business owners and make sure that what we're doing works for them.
Javier should call our office because we'll help him out.
We actually already did help them out.
No, he didn't. He did not. We have a record of everybody that calls. Don't make it up.
It's my turn now, right?
Yeah.
Okay, just checking. From someone in the audience, in the last 2 city bond issues, Hemisphere got more than $30 million. Market Square received peanuts. How will you help small businesses in your district? Mario, you're up first.
Well, Yvette is here right now. She's the president of the business owners for the farmers market at Market Square, and they're all supporting me right now. They're upset that our council member has not been willing to work with them. They have so many challenges over there. Their air conditioning system breaks down every summer. There's locks on the doors that don't work, and they have so much trouble being able to get a long-term lease. Sometimes the city only wants to give them a 1 or 2 year lease, and these businesses have been in there longer than I've been alive, and they want to invest their dollars back in that building, back in that business. But when the city gives them only a 1 or 2 year lease, that doesn't give them any stability. That doesn't give them incentive to invest in that business. And so I've been talking to them, and they come to me and they say, "Look, these are the things that we want." And I say, well, what's the catch? Because these are all sensible, reasonable things. I don't understand why the council member hasn't worked with you on these things. They are all so sensible. I said, absolutely, I'll work with you on those things. And I look forward to working with all the small and micro business owners at Market Square. Because I grew up going to Market Square. And, that's part of our culture and our heritage here in San Antonio, and we need to cherish that, we need to appreciate it, and we need to support that and make sure that we keep them here.
Yes, thank you. Here's what Mario's not telling you, because he's not in any of those negotiations, and we did meet with the Market Square folks dozens of times. In fact, you're right, Center City Development Office offered a Center City Development Office offered a 1 year lease. We said, no way. They need to get a 4+4. That's what we fought for. They asked for many other things. The one thing that we just can't go for is lease assignments. Lease assignments is not being told, is not being expressed here. And what that means is that Market Square is meant to be a low-cost place for small businesses to get their start up. But you got few families that are controlling all the leases. That's not right. That is awful. And again, it's misleading. And they're trying to talk over me because they don't want to talk about it. But ask them about lease assignments. It's wrong. We shouldn't do it. That is a city facility, and it's so misleading.
All right. We're going to move on. We're going to move on to the environment. This is a question from the audience. What are your specific plans, including actions and timetables, for helping to reduce greenhouse gas emissions? Will you commit to shutting down the Dirty Spruce coal plant before 2030? Yes or no? Councilman?
I'm committed to making actionable plans to help our environment. However, I need to also balance the fact that we are just trying to recover from a pandemic. We have a very vulnerable community, and I won't do that on the backs of our vulnerable community. Climate action plan is critical, but we have to be thinking about how we get there so that it does not create a rate increase that affects people, true working families. I was raised by a single mom. I remember the nights that it was so hot that we couldn't afford to turn on the air conditioner. Every dollar counted. And we want to be a city that is efficient. We want to be a city that is thinking about ways to cut down on these kinds of issues. A lot of the programs that I've started think about those things and create layers of protection and think about the environment in a major way. But we can't forget that we're one of the most economically segregated cities in the United States. And this is an issue of privilege. You have vulnerable communities. I will not do it on the backs of vulnerable communities.
Mario?
You know, the less we do to reduce our greenhouse gases, the more we're going to experience these extreme weather events. They're going to be more extreme, and they're going to be more frequent. And so it's not one or the other. We have to have a commitment to sustainability. And, you know, in 2017, the city of San Antonio passed a resolution to meet the Paris Climate Agreement goals. But we've done very, very little since then. You know, our Climate Implementation Committee, Didi Belmares is here, she's on it. They just started meeting. It took almost 4 years to seat a Climate Implementation Committee. And there's so much that we can do. There's so much more that we can do that we're not doing now. And it's not all stuff that's going to break the bank. A lot of that stuff is going to save us money, and, you know, it's going to make our buildings more energy efficient. And that is going to help save our CPS Energy customers money, but it's also going to help you keep your home more comfortable during extreme weather events, and it's going to reduce our reliance on as much energy during those events. And, you know, I'm sorry we just lost the chief operating officer of CPS Energy, because before he left, he and I sat down, and I said, Chris Eugster, I have an idea on how we can effectively shut down the next coal plant, and how we can do it, but also be able to keep the lights on, and also do it where we can keep rates affordable. And I think it's a great compromise. I think it's going to be something that's going to make the environmental community happy, and it's going to make something that's going to make the business community happy. And we sat down at lunch, and I penciled it all out on a napkin, and he said, that's a great idea. He said, I've never seen anything like that before. And so I'm sorry he left, but I'm committed to sitting back down with the rest of the staff at CPS Energy, and even calling Chris Eugster, even though he's working for a utility up in the Pacific Northwest now, but I'll call him up, and I want to work with him to make sure that we can see that through, because we need to reduce our emissions, and that's part of protecting our community.
This summer, CPS Energy has indicated that it is going to, or is contemplating resuming cutting off people for non-payment of utilities. And should we eliminate utility disconnections as a policy for those below 200% of federal policy guidelines, or federal poverty guidelines, excuse me? Should I repeat it? Should we eliminate utility disconnections as a policy for those who are below 200% of federal poverty guidelines? Mario, you're up first.
So we need to protect our most vulnerable, without a doubt. What I would like to do is we need to do more to invest in, when people are having trouble being able to pay their utility bill, we need to go in and help. We need to put them at the top of the list of people who we're going to help to retrofit their homes so that they're more energy efficient, so that we can get them to their bills down to an amount that is affordable for them, right? So if we're just instead of just because a lot of these homes, these are leaky homes. These are homes that are not well insulated. These are homes that are using an excessive amount of electricity per square foot. And so if we go, instead of letting them continue to use excessive amounts of electricity and giving them a break on their bill, what we should do is go in and retrofit them so that they're going to use much less electricity, and then it'll be a bill that they can afford. And because that's going to take some subsidy, right? Just like not making them pay their bill. But the other thing that it does is it reduces the amount of emissions. It reduces our dependency on as much energy.
Okay. Councilman?
One of my proudest moments was telling President Biden about the Under One Roof program. 1,250 homes saved because of leaky roofs, like you mentioned. But they're also high reflectance roofs that reflect the heat. You know, they save on average almost $2,000 a year on their utility bill because they don't gain the heat. The science was there, and we did it right. The hope is that the administration is gonna adopt it, make it part of a HUD program, so you'll see it nationwide. That's a real solution. But to answer your question point blankly, absolutely, we should be doing that. And we have a program that also addresses that. And how we did that is the Emergency Housing Assistance Program. You know, when we first got into this pandemic, I was the one that called for CPS and SAWS to stop disconnects. This was not a time to be doing that. But now we also learned a lot about this pandemic. We learned that we're a very vulnerable community, and that we have systems and we have things in place that can help people. The Emergency Housing Assistance Program, which is what it's now called, came from the Risk Mitigation Fund or program, and that had to do with a lot of folks who were facing displacement. And that displacement really, really was costly on a lot of folks who simply didn't have the wherewithal or the money to move or find a new place to live. The Emergency Housing Assistance Program now, not only does it help you with your rent, it helps you with your utility bill, it helps you with direct cash assistance for food. And so we think we have a model that says, hey, let's continue that program. For those that qualify, as you said, that have issues of paying their bill, let's help them. We've got a program for that. And let's keep doing the Under One Roof program.
So I wanted to ask you all about bond dollars, because in this last election, voters approved Proposition A, which basically says that the city can spend bond dollars on things like affordable housing, economic development type initiatives. And I'm going to ask y'all what y'all think about, what the priority should be in the next bond cycle, realizing the fact that the projects they go through a public process. But how do y'all think some of those dollars should be spent now that there's more options to spend those? Yeah.
Okay.
Councilman.
So, well, housing. We need more housing. It's as simple as that, and that's what Prop A was about. And quite frankly, this is related to so many things. It's related to your property taxes. It's related to homelessness. It's related to the potential eviction crises that we're about to face, right? The CDC has saved us from a lot of issues because they put a moratorium on evictions. But we can't ignore that. And housing, I think, is the issue of our time. And that's by having Prop A pass, I think it gives us another added tool. It's not a silver bullet, but it's an added tool to build more housing all over our city. We need to add to the housing stock. One of the issues that the report spoke about when it came to property taxes and why things are rising is because people are moving here. And when people move here, then there's a scarcity of housing. That scarcity creates market values that go up, and it's telling us we need more housing. But we need more than just affordable housing. We need attainable housing. We need to be thinking about creative ways to do more. And I would just simply add, not just housing, I want to create places for our homeless that provide permanent supportive care. Simple as that. And that's what we could do with our bond.
What's the timeline on that?
2022 for the bond.
Mario?
There's something that I can't let slide, and it's Councilman Treviño has constantly campaigned on saying that he called on CPS Energy to cease disconnects for of electricity for non-payment during the pandemic. Every single utility in the state of Texas ceased disconnects for non-payment. Every single utility in the state of Texas ceased disconnects for non-payment. But he's taking credit for CPS Energy doing this. And so what's important to note is there's only one person on this stage that has a record of holding CPS Energy accountable, and that is me. And that is because, city councils, one of their jobs is to provide checks and balances over CPS Energy. They're the utility that we own, and they need to be accountable to us. And so I served as chair of the environmental stakeholder group that met with CPS Energy senior staff. And we, as a group, pushed through reforms to make them more accountable to you, to make them more transparent for you. CPS Energy's board used to meet, they always meet at 1 o'clock on a Monday. They're meeting this Monday at 1 o'clock coming up. And, working class people can't go at 1 o'clock on a Monday. But they weren't video streaming their meetings, just like we're video streaming right now, where you could watch later. So there was no way for you to watch. And even if you could show up, if you could take off work and you could show up, once you got there, you were not allowed to speak at a board meeting for the utility you own. And we worked to change that. In contrast to that, Councilman Treviño has voted 140 times in a row to approve every single thing that CPS Energy has asked for in the last 5 years. So I didn't want to let that slide.
So can I respond to that?
Absolutely.
You know what else gets video streamed? City council meetings where I did ask for that moratorium on disconnects. I'm sorry, you got it all wrong, Mario. You're just trying to mislead everybody.
I didn't say you didn't call for it. I said that you can't take credit for it whenever utility in the state did it.
I took credit for it. I'm taking credit for it.
Okay.
We did it.
All right.
There's
Let's-
one
It's
person,
on record.
One
Look it
person-
up. That's why we
Let's move
video
on.
stream it.
One person on this stage who has a track record
Mario.
of holding CPS Energy
You
accountable.
were on city council.
let's-
You
let's-
can't take
Okay,
credit.
somebody up here
if-
is going to have to hit the mute button.
Right.
Mute button.
I'm on board.
Maura, if you want to just take a few seconds to
So the
address
next-
the bond question.
The bond, yeah.
Quickly.
I'm excited about this new opportunity for for the voters to be able to decide on the next bond if we're going to invest more in affordable housing projects. I'm really excited about that opportunity. But what I want to do is I want to make sure that if the voters choose to support any of these projects, that we do a better job of making sure that your tax dollars are being invested in a way that where they are accountable, and making sure that we are truly building affordable housing and workforce housing, and that the community is benefiting from it. I want to make sure they pencil out. I want to make sure they're transparent projects, and I want to hold them accountable to that.
Thank you.
Ben, have you got another one? Have you got another one in your stack? We'll go for the last question. Last question, and then I think we'll give you guys a chance to wrap up.
Okay. This is a question from the audience. What is your long-term vision for growth and development in Tobin Hill? Councilman, we'll start with you.
Well, my long-term vision for great neighborhoods like Tobin Hill is to work with the neighborhood, to work with the neighborhood plans, and to be consistent about it, and to stick to it, stick to the plans that we have in place. We want to have safe, walkable neighborhoods. We want to provide beautiful shade trees, pocket parks, compatible growth in that area. We fought for the first ever truly neighborhood police substation. This is going to change everything. In fact, you can go back, I think it was 2 or 3 council meetings where we spoke on the amenities that this substation is going to have. It's more of a community space. It's not just a police station. It's a space for the community to gather. It's going to have green spaces. It's going to have a place for the neighborhood to gather. But we also have to balance some of the concerns that people have along the St. Mary's Strip, because there are businesses that exist there. And how can we balance the needs and concerns of residents that want to have a high quality of life in their neighborhood while balancing the commercial aspects of some corridors. That's why we created the noise ordinance CCR. That's why we meet all the time with business stakeholders, with the neighborhood stakeholders, with just about anybody to make sure that we're addressing the concerns and needs of that neighborhood and meeting them where they are.
Thank you. Mario?
My campaign and my service to District 1 is going to be focused on listening to you and working with you and treating you as our best partner as in how we address our challenges going forward. And so I'm going to lean on the people of Tobin Hill because the people the neighbors who live in Tobin Hill, they are the experts on what is on the character of their neighborhood and how we preserve that character of that neighborhood and how we can have sustainable growth there and what solutions work there and what solutions don't work there. And I've already been talking to people in Tobin Hill, and I know that when I spoke with Parker, he's really concerned, and a lot of his neighbors are really concerned about certain bars there. There's just 3 bars there that don't have a cover charge, and the neighbors are telling me that they're over-serving alcohol and they're low-cost drinks, and people are coming out of there and causing mayhem when they get out. And so we need to do a good job of making sure if those bars won't come, the owners won't come and sit at the table with the neighborhood association, with the neighborhood leaders, or with law enforcement. And so we're just going to have to go in there and we're going to have to be creative about pressuring them to come to the table and be better, better neighbors and better members of the community. But I'm going to lean, just like I'm going to do in any situation as a public servant serving in council, is I'm going to lean on the neighborhoods because the people who are there are the experts in what works for them and how they want to be able to grow and move forward.
Okay. All right. We've got 5 minutes to 9, and I think I promised you guys 90 minutes, so 9 would be 90 minutes. So I'd like you to do your wrap up, and I think we can give you. Have I lost Velma? Give you. You seem to be on a 2-minute thing, so we're gonna do the trust system here on 2 minutes, okay? You're up first.
Thank you, everybody, for coming out tonight and participating in democracy. I'm really excited to be here and appreciate the opportunity to be able to share my ideas with you. And I'm going to stay because I want to hear all of your ideas as well, because that is a huge part of how I'm going to serve in this office. Again, I grew up here in San Antonio. I didn't get to do a full introduction because we kind of skipped over that. But, I graduated from Clark High School. I went to UT Austin, got a degree in history. Then I went on and I got a master's degree in public affairs from the Lyndon B. Johnson School of Public Affairs at UT Austin. And I would love to be able to put that education to use in serving you, because my approach is going to be this. It's going to be what can we do to remove politics from the decision-making process at City Hall as much as possible? How can we do more to make data-driven decisions, to lead with national best practices? And how can we improve public participation processes? There are so many instances where, I've run into people and they say, I was on this Citizens Advisory Committee and we all worked together and we had these facilitated meetings, and at the end of the day, we came up with a plan and then the city went off in their own direction. And that is unacceptable to me. I've experienced it myself in developing the city's climate plan. There are a lot of people who've complained to me about that, who sat on the Citizens Advisory Committee for the Alamo. luckily now we have new leadership in the Alamo, and that project is taking off again. But I'm going to lean on you all. I want more transparency. I want better public participation processes. I would appreciate your support. My website is www.mariobravo.org, not .com.org. You can donate there. You can sign up to volunteer. I would love to have your support. Thank you very much.
Okay.
On the Alamo, to start, I refuse to spend city dollars on state property. It's as simple as that. There's no other way to put it. If you believe that's okay, then everything we talked about, all these resources that we lack in our city to do the infrastructure, to do all the housing, to do the bond projects, why would you say any of that? Why would you spend money on somebody else's property? That's silly to me. I'm running again because I think I have a proven track record, and you just simply have to go to robertotrevino.org, see all the approaches that we've done. Our job as council members is to provide access to resources, true access. People sometimes feel left out, and that's the whole point, is we need to be a voice for those that simply feel like they don't have a voice. We will continue to do that. And that's why I say that we need to be a city of opportunity and not consequences. At the heart of this is me and my team continuing to work with all of you, like we always have, to be that representative, to continue to work with you, to work with other areas that weren't even District 1. We know that the city looks to District 1 to lead the way on so many issues. We've done it for 6.5 years. I look forward to doing it for 2 more years.
Thank you both very much. I really appreciate your taking the time, and thank you guys when there are many other things you could be doing for coming out and giving us your attention tonight. Indeed,
Thank you all.
District 1 is a really important district. I work in District 1, although I live in District 2 and vote. And everybody out there, you registered to vote? Right? Right? Okay. And when does early voting start?
May 24th,
And election day?
June 5th.
All right. Vote.
Thank you all.